Hey, welcome back to Bridal Sewing Techniques, and today we're going to learn how to do this fancy schmancy traditional hem. This is a horsehair braid hem on a satin gown. So on the underside you'll see the lace hem tape that's on the edge, and you can see this heavy cotton interlining. The hem tape is kind of blind stitched to that. It feels almost like a canvas kind of fabric. And then let's take a peek inside. There's the horsehair braid. So we're going to learn all these different components and how to do this hem. It's a very popular hem, so you're going to see it a lot. All right, so first take a minute just to kind of study the way this hem was put together. You can see the edge. That would be kind of floor length, and then you've got the hem tape that's going to keep that satin from fraying. And then you've got the horsehair braid in there. That's 1 inch wide. So there's a 1 inch of extra satin under there, rolled under. What we're going to do is we're going to take our sewing gauge, put it under there, and get a very specific measurement. So you're going to butt it all the way up to that fold edge, squeeze it a little bit to slide it, and then pull it out and see what that length is. There it is. All right, so it's just a little less than 1.25 inches. So now what you're going to do is you have this pin that is marking the floor. And you're going to put your gauge on there, and you're going to mark your cut line now with another pin. All right, so right there I'm gesturing to the cut line, and obviously you're going to need more than one pin to mark this, right? What you're going to do is you're going to make a template for the exact length. You're going to mark it. Then I like to put this little scribble down here, so that way if you get distracted and have to set your template aside, do something else and come back, you don't accidentally flip your template around and get the wrong measurement, measurement from the wrong end or something. So you're going to go across the front of this skirt of this gown. This gown has 2 seams down the front panel of it. So we're going to have 2 seams down the front, and then we have our side seams. That's the side seam, and I'm showing how we're going to want to taper it there. You can tell it's a side seam because of that stabilizing tack there that's adjoining all of the layers at the side seams. Okay, so we're going to want a nice gradual angle to go from just behind the side seam, and then it's going to swoop up and meet your other pins. You don't want to do this too drastic, or it just won't look very graceful if you just kind of, pulled it up really quick. So you're going to pick something that's kind of like a halfway point, make a new mark. And you're going to want to do that, just 5 or 6 inches, something like that, in front of the side seams. This is definitely a conversation you want with the bride. It depends on the height of the bride also. Some of the brides want it to completely taper out before the side seams. Some of them want it halfway tapered at the side seams and kind of bringing in the side flare of the train a little bit. And then some of them want it floor length all the way to the side seams, and then to really change the shape of the train. So that's definitely a conversation you're going to want to have with each bride. Here you've seen I've marked a nice gradual angle for this dress. So you're going to need all of that old hem to be released so that you can go across and make your new angle. And now we're going to start to cut. Now, what I'm recording with does have a wide angle lens on it, and these shears look huge. They're really not. They're just your regular 9-inch dressmaker shears. So you can see sometimes they look normal, and then other times they get close to the lens and they look huge. I just wanted you to know what size I cut this with. And I'm just going to follow the line of my pins all the way around. Let's speed things up a bit. My hand's always working behind the dress to make sure there's nothing else that I'm accidentally picking up behind. And here it is all the way across. There's the center where I've got the 2 pins. And there's one of those front seams. There's the other front seam, and I stopped there because you want to be able to duplicate that taper on the other side of the hem. The best way to do that, I think, as far as fastest and most accurate, is not to go back with your template there, but rather to line up your seams. So you're going to line up those 2 front seams and pin them together very thoroughly. Make sure they're lined up perfectly. So you want it lined up at the bottom where the 2 seams are, and then again at the top. Pin it together all the way through to the end of your taper. Make sure those side seams are perfectly aligned, and you're going to have a mirror in the way you cut your hem without too much measuring. And here you can see from our scrap piece that everything is lined up great. Now it's going to be time to put the horsehair braid on there and put the new hem on the dress. Alright, so we're going to release this lace hem tape here. This is usually a blind stitch with invisible thread, a really light thread. Always make sure your blade is pointing toward the fabric that doesn't matter. So my blade is going to be facing up because if I cut a little bit of the old hem off, it really doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything. Release the old horsehair braid for just a few inches so that we can introduce our new horsehair braid. So there you go. There's usually some stitch witchery in there too. You'll find that it's kind of fused a little bit. And here's what I use, flexi lace hem tape. And this is going to just kind of cover the edge so that your satin can't fray. And it gives you something that's really easy to stitch through too when you do your blind stitch. You're going to overlap it a little bit, and then you're going to sew it to where the satin is kind of at the halfway point of the hem tape, just right there in the middle. So we're going to put the lace in, get it started. You're sewing on the left side so that you're sewing the hem tape to the satin. And then on the right side, that's where you're going to do your blind stitch later. And let's speed this up so you can get through it. As always, remember you can change your speed in your settings there on YouTube. Go into your settings and you can make it 200% if you want it to go faster. And when you get to a place like this and you need to join some new hem tape, just fold it over lay it over the old, and keep on getting it. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Horsehair braid, 1 inch wide. Here's the information. I buy this by the roll. You can also get them in smaller packages. And I get different widths. I keep stocked in my shop. Usually like the 2 inch, the 1 inch, the 1/2 inch. Those are my most common widths. Sometimes you see it as much as 4 inches or 5 inches wide. It's very springy and flexible. Now with this, even though you're sewing through quite a lot of fabric, you want to use a smaller size needle if you can. The larger the needle, the more likely you are to strike one of the horsehair braid fibers, and that can really, cause a ugly snag in the horsehair braid. It can also jam up your bobbin. So a nice fresh size 14 needle would do. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna align the right side of this horsehair braid with the very edge of the satin. And we're gonna sew this down. Some people sew all the way to the left of the horsehair braid. I come in like, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, something like that. I don't like to sew on the very edge because the horsehair braid likes to flip when you do that. I just find it's a lot more secure if you nudge it in just a little bit. So you're going to go the whole length of your freshly cut hem, and just check your work every now and then. Make sure you're doing things consistently. Sometimes the horsehair braid can walk a little bit, so you definitely want to be in control of where all this is on the hem. So just get to the end of it, and then you're going to cut the extra off. And it rolls over nicely. And doesn't that look just like the original hem? All right, there's your stitch witchery. You're going to put that in there just to stabilize a little bit for you. Again, we don't put this in to replace a hem. This is a tool to stabilize it so that our hand sewing is more accurate. You can see that little nudge right there. That's where the old meets the new. All right, and to get this nice and flat, when you go across the seam, you're gonna snip it and flip it so that when you roll it over, you don't have 4 layers of fabric there. It can kind of distribute that nub. So I'm going to go through and put the stitch witchery for the whole length of the new hem. When you're pressing this down, you're going to want to use more pressure, less movement. If you really move things around with the iron, but you're not pressing very hard, it's going to be sloppy. But if you really are pressing down hard, you're going to get a nice crisp edge. So I'm starting my stitch here, threading right through that knot so that it's locked in place. You can do this blind stitch with a blind stitch machine if you like. I just find that for me, it's just as fast to do nice long hand stitches. And I think they're neater, and you're rarely going to accidentally pick up that satin layer. This is very easy when you make that little bubble in the fabric like I'm doing. Very easy to just pick up the interlining and the hem tape. You definitely don't want any pick marks on the satin side. And a lot of times the blind stitch machines, you know, you spend so long trying to get the depth accurate that you could have hand sewed it by the time you were done. You can see there's no pickups there. And here's a close-up. You're gonna run that needle for a nice long stitch behind there. This is a thin needle that I've bent just a little bit to make it come to the surface a little easier. And you're gonna do this the whole length. Check it out when you're done, make sure it's neat. There you go. Looks great. Good work, team. I hope this has helped you. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. It means so much to me. Thank you.